when I got kicked in the head by Bill Goldberg in WCW, it ended my career like right away, and I didn't know it at the time, but it ended my career, and a year and a half later after that injury, which I suffered a stroke, and anyway, I had a lawsuit going with Lloyd's of London in the interim period leading into all that, but I had to sue Lloyd's of London to pay me for I had a policy that protected me if I got hurt, and they totally decided that they weren't going to pay me, and I was hurt for real, and I had to take them to court. And in the end, they ended up settling with me and paying me my full policy, which was never enough. I lost $16 million with that one kick in the head. Bill Goldberg, I don't like to wind myself up on it, but I mean, that pathetic excuse for a wrestler kicking me in the head. If I could name one wrestler that has no business being in the Hall of Fame, it's Bill Goldberg. He hurt just about every single wrestler that he worked with, and he literally kicked me in the head as hard as he could. There was no pretend or anything fake about it. He might as well picked up a hockey stick and just swung it as hard as he could and cracked me over the back of the neck with it. And to have to go to court and prove that you're really hurt was, I finally got my settlement money, but it was peanuts compared to what I lost in reality. I lost, honestly, I heard Eric Bischoff go, we didn't sign him that much money. It's like, yeah, you did, Eric. You signed me to $16 million if you add it all up, not including the exchange in Canadian, which would make it about $24 million. But, so I lost a ton of money in a second. And so when I took Lloyd's of London to court and got my settlement, we had written up a thing in my that said that I was allowed to do wrestling skits, wrestling sketches, but no full contact wrestling I would never be allowed to do that again. So that ruled out me doing any kind of matches in Saudi Arabia where like Goldberg got paid $3 million for 5 minutes, putting somebody in a headlock for 5 minutes and making $3 million. That's where I should have been. I could be doing that right now, still, if I hadn't got kicked in the head by Goldberg. So I had this policy or this condition with Lloyd's that I was not allowed I could do wrestling skits, wrestling sketches, but no full contact wrestling. And it's like, okay, so what can you do with that? And the truth is, when I saw Vince wrestling Donald Trump at whatever the WrestleMania was that year, I remember watching it and going, I could do that. I could do what Donald Trump's doing easy. And maybe there's a way for me to actually go back and do something with, I could wrestle Vince or I could wrestle Trump or somebody, but not do it. I would have to do it kind of like theatrically, like no physicalities, no suplexes off the top or body slams or, so I was really limited. All I could do was standing up and do offensive stuff like punch guys and kick guys, or I could move out of the way, but I couldn't take any falls or bumps, as they call them in wrestling. And I remember thinking about it after I watched Trump and Vince at one of the WrestleMania was the year before that. And I thought, as soon as I watched them wrestle, I called up WWE and said, I would like to talk to Vince, and I have an idea that I wanted to present to him. And they never called me back. They just left me hanging so I just assumed, okay, well that idea didn't fly very well, and that was the end of it. I wasn't going to lose any sleep over it. But they called me about 3 months later and said, Vince wants you to fly to. I was on my way home I was living in Hawaii at the time, and they said Vince is going to be in San Francisco, and when you can you meet him in San Francisco and have a meeting with him and talk to him about what you might be able to do with this if you guys did a storyline or an angle. So I flew into San Francisco, and I met Vince in some hotel where they were having the TV tapings where it was back then, and we had this talk. We sat down, and it was a pretty nice talk. I remember we talked about stuff we could do, and like I say, I couldn't take any falls, I couldn't take any bumps, I couldn't do anything where it could be misconstrued as a blow to my head, and because Lloyd's of London would sue me again, and for everything they could get out of me, and so I was really careful. And so then we agreed. We shook hands on a kind of a tentative deal, and then we just talked about it for about 3, 4, 5 months, and it was very close, getting close to Christmas time or New Year's, and they had to have the contract signed, and we were still kind of negotiating. And I was trying to get permission or approval from Lloyd's in London, so I didn't have any problems with them. It's like, we're going to do this thing with me and Vince McMahon, but it's not going to be a real fight. It's going to be mostly anything we can think of that's not real fighting, where I don't have to get hurt, or I can't take any falls, and so anyway, I thought my lawyer was he was approaching Lloyd's in London about it and going to get permission, because it was all well in advance, and they would go, wow, as long as there's wrestling skits, wrestling sketches, and no full contact, they would be okay with that. And anyway, he didn't get an answer from them, and then I got a call from WWE saying that I had to sign this contract in agreement and do it on January 1st when they had the Monday Night Raw. On the Monday, I had to be, I think it was January 3rd, but I had to. That was the day that had the whole story. And Vince basically put it to me like this: if we don't do it on that Monday night, we don't do it. It's canceled. It's kiboshed. And so I couldn't get permission. It was over the holiday, and I couldn't get permission. And I ended up having to sign the contract with WWE blindly. And then it was like after I signed the contract, and me and Sean shook hands on Monday Night Raw, if you remember that. I got home the next day, and Lloyd's of London was suing me again for breaking my contract, and that's when Vince looked like he kicked me in the crotch or whatever, and I fell on my knees. That was enough for Lloyd's of London to open up the whole lawsuit again. Now they're suing me. So I had to come back with Vince and say, I don't know if I can even do anything now, because Lloyd's of London's suing me again, and I can't risk a really expensive lawsuit with those guys. So I end up having to just really make sure I'm going, well, I just got to make sure that everything is a wrestling skit or a sketch, and it looks like everything's like acting. And that's why all that stuff, I think, it was never my greatest storyline, the one with Vince, where we fought each other. But at the same time, I was so limited in what I could do. And of course, I hadn't wrestled in a long time either. So it's like, I really didn't have a stroke and all these things, so I can't really do drop kicks, and I can't deliver a Bret Hart match the way I would like to have with Vince. And nor is Vince an actual real wrestler, so he doesn't know how to do wrestling moves and things. So it really was not going to be the greatest work that I've ever done in the ring, let me put it that way. But I stuck to my guns because I believed that I was right, and I was going to go back and do that storyline with Vince just for my own. When I had my stroke in 2002, I remember thinking when I was in my wheelchair, I can remember thinking that I'll never be in a wrestling ring again. Maybe I need a bigger sip. But I thought when I had my stroke, I would never walk out to a big crowd ever again. And part of my life was over, and that kind of hurt. And of course, when I was wrestling Vince, it was like I wanted to have that moment, like where I went back just to enjoy it. It was like a challenge. It was like trying to raise the bar to challenge yourself to do something that you can't do very well. But it was a challenge, and it was like, oh, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what I can do. Even if it sucks and it's the worst match ever, I'm going to try it. And so I think when I look back at that whole experience, I would say Vince was, he was really, really good to me about everything. He tried really hard to come up with his best, and he really tried to protect me with my lawsuit and make sure I didn't take any falls or trip or have anything where it looks like I hit myself on the head, which would have been detrimental to me. But like the whole story where the car backed in and broke my leg, you remember all that stuff? It was kind of hokey and kind of silly, but at the same time it all worked. I mean, I didn't really hurt. It was all acting basically, and it was all storyline stuff, but it built all the way into WrestleMania. And I never did the lawsuit with Lloyd's. They opened up a lawsuit with me that is still open today, but they never actually went forward with it because they didn't really have any kind of a case. In the whole storyline with Vince, I never took any bumps. I never fell backwards. I never hit my head on the mat. I didn't do anything where you could even possibly remotely say that, oh, there he hit his head. Okay, now we can sue him. So I was really careful about that. And I actually really thought the storyline, Vince came up with the entire storyline, the whole everything, including all my family and siblings all around the ring. And it's probably I'd like to think I'm working on a second book. And if I finish that second book, it'll be a great story about the match I had with Vince, because there was so many funny things about it. But like all my family coming down and being in the room, and they didn't know when they flew down, they thought they were all just coming for the Hall of Fame. And you have to understand, half my family was pretty mad at Vince about what happened with Holland, for starters, and what happened with me and the screw job, and the fact that Vince never paid one penny to my dad for stealing his territory from him. And Vince McMahon bought my dad's territory from him for $750,000 and never paid him one penny. And I never knew that till after the screw job, or after Owen died, actually, was when I found out. My parents told me that they never got one penny from him. And so a lot of people in my family weren't big Vince McMahon fans. And at the same time, there was certain members of my family that were not big fans of mine. They were all opposed to me in different things through the Owens lawsuit and a lot of. When you have a big family, it can be a lot of issues with different personalities in the families and stuff. And so when we had that meeting in the dressing room with Vince telling everybody that they were going to be lumberjacks and all around the ring, and I remember my sister Allison's a librarian. She's like, she was like freaked out, and I remember their jaw dropped, and it's like, Allison, you just got to stand around the ring. It's like, she was just like terrified, and anyway, my brother Bruce, some people used to think my brother Bruce was pretty stiff as a wrestler and kind of reckless in the ring, like with his punches and stuff like that. And the first thing Vince McMahon said was, he goes, your brother Bruce, I don't want him laying one finger on me. Your brother Bruce has to be the referee. Has to be the referee, because then he won't be able to touch me. So, okay, we're going to make Bruce the referee. I remember the next day when we had all the family together, one of my sisters, my sister Allison, the librarian, was just freaking out and going, Wayne's the referee. Wayne's got to be the referee, because he was the referee for my dad's wrestling. And I'm going, Allison, don't leave that out of it, because Vince wants Bruce to be the referee for a reason, so he doesn't get hurt. But anyway, I remember my sister Allison, like almost like in tears, protesting that Wayne should be the referee, not Bruce, because Wayne was always the referee, which is a good point, but she didn't understand the backstory to it. But the thing I love about that match was Vince, just before we walked out to go to the ring, Vince, he tells me, he goes, I want you to hit me absolutely as hard as you can with those chairs. And then he shows me, he pulls up his coat, and he's got this big rubber pad, like stuntman pad, that's about 6 inches thick, that's curved to make him look like he's got a really big muscular back. Which Vince is a pretty muscular guy, so you didn't really notice if you just thought, like, whatever he was wearing that day, you just go, oh, he must be that big, Vince. But this pad was, like, you couldn't hurt anybody with that pad. I could have beat him with a baseball bat and it wouldn't have hurt him. And so he goes, just hit me as hard as you want all the way through the match. So I just remember in the ring, I kept smashing Vince over the back with as hard as I could. Sometimes it hurt my hands bashing him so hard. And my brother Bruce, who's refereeing, is like freaking out. He keeps backing me up and going, you're going too stiff, you're too strong, take it easy on him, you know. And I'm like, Bruce, step aside and all that. And like, and wham, and bashing him. And I remember Bruce is looking at me like, you're going to kill him, you know, like, you know, he totally freaked out. And I never told Bruce that story, that he had a pad under his back. But I know it wasn't my greatest match, but I love the match just for what it meant to me.